Yeah, so welcome to the webinar series. This is a webinar by Correlation, European Harm Reduction Network, and Drugreporter, and we are very happy to have you here. And what we will talk about today is I will introduce myself a little bit, and then I will talk about our issues. So I will talk about why we're dealing with these issues and what are our key topics in drug policy reform and harm reduction advocacy. And then I will talk a little bit about the definition of video advocacy, not too much, and also a little bit about what you need to be able to do this kind of special way of advocacy. And then I will talk in length about our experiences. So 17 years of video advocacy in the service of drug policy reform and harm reduction. And I will basically try to explain all the aspects how we can use video advocacy. And I will also give examples of how we were actually using video advocacy. And in the meantime, I will show you short trailers, so not long videos, but 3-minute long trailers. And then we will have a discussion. And if we have some time, I will talk a bit more about video advocacy theory, a little bit more about strategy and storytelling. Probably we will not have time. So if you would like to hear that, maybe then you should try to get to one of our actual long 5-day long video advocacy trainings where you can also learn about that. A few words about myself. I'm István Gábor Takács. I'm Hungarian. You can see my email there. I work at the Rights Reporter Foundation, and I'm a psychologist actually, so I'm not a professional videographer. I just learned it by doing it. I took part at a 2-week-long course in Montreal by Witness, where I learned this. But first, when I graduated as a psychologist, while I was studying psychology, I worked at a human rights watchdog NGO, just office work to get some money so I can live on my own, at the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union. But I enjoyed it so much and I liked it so much that I actually met harm reduction and drug policy there because they were involved in that. And that's how I got to learn about this. And then I was invited to Frankfurt am Main to be an intern at a drop-in center, which was called Café Fix. It was a harm reduction drop-in center in the downtown of Frankfurt, near the train station, where a lot of public nuisance was because of all the public drug use and open drug scenes. And I worked there for a couple of months as an intern, so I learned harm reduction there. So that was my first real-life experience. And I lived in a house where people who got support, methadone substitution treatment, were supported there in that living community. So it was really a fantastic experience. And I think actually ever since, that's kind of like a source for my enthusiasm. All these 20 years, I look back at that time and I took that inspiration from there. And then I got home. I took a lot of needles home that they didn't need, they didn't want, and I took it down to a Budapest needle exchange program, and they were happy about it, and they also kept me there as a staff. So I kept working there for 5 years. And in the meantime, I worked at the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union in the drug policy program. And there we started to do video work, and I'm doing it ever since. In 2016, we got out of this organization with my colleague Peter, and started our own organization, Rights Reporter Foundation. So almost 10 years we've been doing this organization. And actually, what we're doing is we're advocating for the human rights of vulnerable populations. And we want the policies affecting their lives to be evidence-informed, that respect human rights, and that are done by the meaningful involvement of these communities. And we are mostly focusing on drug policy reform and harm reduction. We have a website called Drugreporter. It's on drugreporter.net. We have 28,000 followers on the English Facebook page and 61,000 followers on the Hungarian Facebook page. That's pretty active. We also have a Hungarian blog on one of the remaining free Hungarian online press. We have a busy blog that gets a lot of views. We also have podcasts. So this is a main hub. Drugreporter is a main hub for all our work. And there you find all the videos that we're making. There's a video database there, and you can search by topics, you can search by countries, and you can search on a map. That's all the videos that we made around the world. The blue one are done by us. The yellow ones are done by our Russian language speaking colleagues, Igor, Alex, and Sasha, and they are from Drug Users News. So we also have a Russian page on Drug Reporter, and they produce those videos. And the green videos are done by those who we trained, and they made some movies around the world. We haven't been to all these places. Some of the, for example, you see Iceland. We have never been to Iceland, but we did an interview online about Iceland. So basically, if the topic is related to that country, then you can see that blue little thing. And we have about almost 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Most of our stuff we upload on YouTube, and we have about 900 videos on the Drug Reporter channel, and a lot more, many more on the old HCLU channel, and we have about 2.6 million views on the Drug Reporter YouTube channel, and about 4 million on the old HCLU channel. We also have a lot of drug related content on that, and yeah, this is how our channel looks like. So we also do some media work that Peter is doing. So directly going to the I just make my screen a little bit smaller. I hope you see. Yeah, no, it probably changed for you too, right? Maybe yeah. I don't do it. Okay, no, it didn't change for you. Sorry. Yes, it did. Okay, so we also do media work. So we have the website, we do media work. We take part in campaigns, all kinds of international campaigns, partly organizing, partly connecting with our video work. And we do a lot of video advocacy. This is, I like to make pictures of the gear that we use. This is one of the older cameras that we were using. This is another time. I usually put out before we travel somewhere. I usually put it out on the table and arrange all the cameras and everything, so that I see that we bring everything that we need. This is the recent. These are our most recent cameras, and we also do training. So we started making films and then figured that it's much more effective if we train people and empower them and let them make movies on their own. So we do a lot of video and media training. I do a video part, which can be from 2-day to 5-day long training, and Peter, my colleague, does the media training part, which is a 1-day long media communication training. And in this training, this is from South Africa from last year. This is from Budapest. So we train activists in ideally 5 days, where they learn everything. So from preparation, so from pre-production to production, which is actually producing your film, to post-production, so editing and distribution. They can learn all that in 5 days, and then they practice on site, and then they learn editing, and then they can bring home all this knowledge, and then hopefully they will make movies in the future. And we also do networking. So we are part of European and international networks like the Correlation Network or International Drug Policy Consortium. And we also try to maintain our own network from the people that we train. So when we train somebody, we have a listserv and try to communicate with the people that we train so that we can support them if they need, or if we have some money to produce something, then we could collaborate and work together with them. And they are Igor and Alex from the Drug Users News. Igor is from Ukraine and Alex is from Russia. Alex from Russia traveled to Israel, and Igor lived in Crimea, where he had to flee because he made movies about what happened with the people who were on methadone substitution, what the Russians did to them. They basically closed down all the methadone centers in Crimea. He made a film about it, and the FSB started to investigate. So he had to escape, and where he escaped was Kherson, which was the city that was first occupied by Russia when they started their attack against Ukraine. So he stayed there for, I think, almost a year, and it was very worried for him. But luckily, when it was liberated, he could go to Ukraine, and he keeps working with us, and he's doing more or less fine. He keeps searching for money to be able to do his work, and we try to support him as we can. So at the end, maybe I will send you, I will explain more about this. You can support his work if you would like. And we do some research and publication as well. So what are our issues? Why are we dealing with drug policy reform and harm reduction advocacy? I would like to show the first video now. This is a video from, I think, 2012, so it's not a very recent film, but it kind of summarizes why we are working in this field and what kind of issues we are dealing with. And what I would like to say that if you go up to the top of the screen, there's this green part where you can select side-by-side view. So then you can pull my part big, and that's where the film will appear. And if you have, and I set it up in a way that I cannot talk while the film is going, which is good. But in the chat I can communicate. And if you have any questions, I will try to check the chat time to time when I show films, and then I will answer them. So I would like to play this first video now.
Gulp down all the pills at once.
The global drug war now stands in the way not just of effective AIDS treatment, but is in direct conflict with human rights. When you are pursuing a policy that treats somebody as a criminal simply because of what they put in their body, that seems to me almost by definition a violation of human rights. When you are depriving millions of people of their freedom by incarcerating them, that seems to me a violation of human rights. When you are depriving indigenous people of the rights to grow agricultural products that they have grown and used in traditional forms for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that seems like a violation of human rights.
We are seen as non-citizens, and because we are non-citizens, we can be scapegoated. And this allows governments to say you are criminal, you are bad, you are evil, and therefore we can lock you up, we can take away your rights, we can torture you to try to make you no longer a drug user, and we can execute you if you sell drugs.
Drug users' human rights are violated daily through mass incarceration, through detention camps, through denial of services, through denial of HIV prevention materials. That means that people are left stuck with a virus that will possibly kill them or may kill them.
About 80% of terminal cancer patients develop severe pain, and that pain can only be treated effectively with opioid medications, such as morphine or methadone. In many countries, patients with cancer don't have access to the medications because there are drug regulations that make it very difficult for doctors to prescribe. So the end result is that there are millions of people worldwide who die in horrible pain because they can't get access to a medication that costs just a few pennies.
Police abuse and taking money from drug users, raping drug users, torturing drug users, it has nothing to do with the conventions. The conventions don't say you have to do it, but the conventions provide a certain framework or the certain discourse on drug issue that puts it in the legal domain.
A lot of people end up in compulsory drug treatment centers, and those drug treatment centers are a gross exaggeration of what they really are, because there's often no medically assisted treatment.
What kind of human rights abuses happen in these camps?
First of all, forced labor is a human rights abuse in and of itself. These people aren't prisoners. They've never seen a lawyer or a judge. They are put into torture rooms, hung by one or both arms, made to kneel on glass or sharp objects, forced to squat in water in rooms too small to stand up in, starved, and beaten.
In China, we interviewed a former guard in one of the drug detention centers, and what we found, we asked him why the center was testing routinely everyone for HIV and not giving them their results. And the guard frankly said, well, we test people to find out which of the women are HIV positive, to know who we need to use a condom with. And then, we have sex with them, and then we give them heroin to comfort them afterwards. And And we asked this guard also about physical abuse, about beatings of the drug users in these centers. And he said, well, yeah, that happens. And we asked him how often it happens. And he said, oh, well, about 10%. And we said, well, how do you calculate 10%? And he said, well, anything higher than 10% would be a human rights problem.
Estimates are that around a quarter of the world's prison population is in prison for non-violent drug-related offences. The war on drugs has resulted in perhaps as much as 2 million people being in prison who needn't be there.
Well, there are people that all of us know, if you've lived in New York for any amount of time, that have gotten these ridiculously long sentences for very small possession charges or paraphernalia charges, because as the law stood, a judge didn't have discretion. You could get a maximum sentence of 25 years.
Imagine a young person named Obama, had he been caught with possession of marijuana, which he has openly said he smoked, he would have had a felony conviction. He never could have run for public office. He couldn't even work as a janitor in a school because of a felony conviction. He couldn't vote. This is a huge issue, and there's an ethical obligation for people like that, for physicians, for scientists, to start speaking out about it.
In many places, prisons are overcrowded because of the numbers of people who are in prison for drug-related offenses. You see a whole range of human rights violations piled up on top of that because of overcrowded conditions, because of extended waiting times in pretrial detention, because of unfair trials.
There's at least 16 countries in Asia that still implement the death penalty for drug-related crimes. Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, China. China, for example, televises executions of drug users and drug dealers on the 24th of June, the International Day Against Illicit Drug Trafficking. In 2003, the Thai government implemented a very bloody war on drugs, where over 2,200 drug users and petty dealers were arrested, brought to police stations, released, and shortly after release, someone was waiting in an alley and they were essentially shot in the back of the head, this execution style. And then the government claimed the success of getting rid of drugs in the country.
More and more, the international human rights community is gaining consciousness of the ways in which the drug war and drug criminalization are in fact violations of traditional human rights.
Once you start locking people up or treating people like drugs as something to be controlled or contained rather than as someone to be valued, then the costs are terrible. Whether you're talking about 2,800 people gunned down in Thailand, or you're talking about 400,000 people put in labor camps and forced treatment centers in Asia, or you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people jailed in Russia for the residue in a used syringe, and then put in places where they have no choice but to share a syringe, or they have no access to condoms or anything that could protect them. The human rights costs are almost unmeasurable.
So that was the first film, and then you can see how heavy issues we're dealing with. But we're trying in our work. We're trying to be sometimes, not so. Even though there are very heavy issues, we sometimes do try to deal with humor and with a positive, empowering message. That was also partly in this film. So, a few words about our activism. So, as activists, we want to achieve change. Let me see how my microphone is set up, because we had a discussion here that you actually could hear my. But no, that's not possible. So anyway. Okay, so as activists, we want to achieve change, and we do that through communication. We're not, if we were politicians, we could go there and make a law, but we can't do that. So we try to convince the politicians to make a law. or if they don't listen to us, we try to convince the masses, the people, so that they vote on such politicians that change the law, or that they make a kind of mass to actually demand that change. And we do this communication by like traditional methods, like communicating with the press, writing press releases, writing interviews, organizing events, doing our own conferences, protests and meetings, and writing reports, articles, blogs, scientific papers and books. And this is all, yeah. So, but earlier we had to rely on others making audiovisual content about us. So we had to give a television interview, and then we were hoping to have a good report, or we had to rely on a big TV crew or filmmakers to make a documentary about our topic. But since 2006, when actually YouTube appeared, we can now communicate much more easily through video and create our own visual content. And I think what I'm doing in the 17 years is basically trying to promote a narrative because I think that we interpret the world around us in narratives, in stories and narratives and explanations. And in terms of drug policy and harm reduction, there's a prohibitionist narrative and a harm reductionist narrative. And the prohibitionist narrative says that there are good and bad drugs, and the harm reduction narrative says that there are no good or bad drugs, but there are good or bad policies. And the prohibitionist narrative says that drug users are different than non-drug users, so they are immoral, criminal, sick, or sinners. And harm reductionists say that no, people who use drugs are exactly the same as anybody else, and actually every person in the world is a people who uses drugs, just we're using different drugs, and some of them are legal and some of them are not. And drug use is actually part of normal human behavior. And the prohibitionist narrative says that criminalization is the solution, so it will solve the problem. We lock people up, and then everything will be happy. And we say that criminalization is actually part of the problem, and that criminalization is causing most of the harms and most of the problems around drug use. And we say that harm reduction is part of the answer, reducing the harms. And the prohibitionist narrative is a kind of dehumanizing narrative. It's taking away people's dignity, and what we're trying to do is to give back the dignity to people, to humanize this story. So with all the films that I did, 1,000 films, all of them are about giving back the humanity to those who deserve it and whose dignity was taken away. So the way we're doing it with video is by documenting something. So we go out and film something, documenting, for example, harmful policies or human rights abuses or good practices. And then we also educate people. We try to educate the masses, the general public, decision makers, our allies, the affected population, their relatives or students about harm reduction or drug policy reform. And we also try to mobilize them. So we're trying to get them to do something for our cause, for change. So the thing that we do, video advocacy, is always for something. It's always to achieve a kind of change. That's what it makes it different from other kind of filmmaking, from general documentary filmmaking, for example. So video advocacy is using video to help drive changes in policies by communicating with particular audiences and with video. So it is always embedded in a wider advocacy environment. It usually doesn't stand alone. There's an organization, there's some kind of environment in which we function, and it's complementary to all the other tools. And it always has a goal, so it's made for a reason, not just about an issue. So documentary filmmakers just want to show something, but we want to change something. That's why we show that. So that's the difference. And now the question, and I'm waiting some of your answers in the comment section, is what do you think could be the strengths of video advocacy compared to traditional forms of advocacy? So, for example, writing PDF reports or doing events or writing books or stuff like that. So let me check out the chat And if you write there, I will. Yeah, so it's a more emotional way of communication. Yeah, exactly. So you can have a human face. Yeah, easier to understand, Nicoletta. Exactly. That's right. So it's so you can actually explain everything in a 1.5 minute video. It is possible. You can say everything. So it's easier to understand than, for example, a long 50-page report. Easier to get, Shayla says, easier to get shares and engagement with different audiences on social media. Yeah, exactly. So on social media, I think there's research about it. Most people watch the video parts. So it's definitely easier to get out to a bigger mass of audience. Maybe any other tips? Okay, then we can go on to my selection. So I pretty much wrote down the same that you wrote. So it can be short. Of course, it can be long as well. So you can make a 3-hour long video if you want, but you can do it. So you can get your message in a very short a soundbite, or a reel, as it is called nowadays, like an Instagram reel. And it's interesting. So you actually show video, and a picture says more than 1,000 words. So it can be interesting. It's easy to understand. Personal story gives your message a human face. It can reach a large audience, as you said. Where there's internet, it's easily accessible, and it's relatively cheap. Now everybody can make a video. You take your phone and upload it. You take your phone, make a live video. So it's relatively cheap and easy. What could be the weaknesses? Anything that can be a weakness of using video as advocacy tool? Exactly. Not everyone has access. That's a very important point, because we said that good internet access makes our lives easier, but also if there's not good internet access, because we mostly work for internet, then you just don't reach those people. In Hungary, for example, the state propaganda Hungarian state propaganda is on television, but now also on Facebook. Actually, a lot of Facebook messages, but they reach their populations through that, and maybe we can't reach those people. Not easy to get people to talk openly on the camera sometimes. Yes, that's true. That's one thing that we do. For example, I mean, in our video advocacy world, we always record somebody who is willing to speak. So if somebody doesn't want to talk, then you just don't record them. Maybe you can do a hidden camera of a politician or something, but we usually work with our allies, and sometimes it can be difficult. But the way we work, and that's one of our advantage that we have, is that we usually, as a filmmaker, like an activist filmmaker, we're working with allies. And so, for example, needle exchange program managers and people who already work in this field and already have the connection to the people that you want to film. And then that's a kind of gateway. So that's a big advantage compared to just standard filmmakers who out of the blue want to make a movie about this subject and don't have connections. Could be taken less seriously by the authorities, traditional media outlets. Yeah, maybe less serious. Like, yes. So basically, shortness and having a video can be taken less seriously sometimes. Yes. Than, for example, a big research. That's true. Difficult with targeting our population we need to reach. Could be difficult. Yes. We usually target like a broad audience, but sometimes you target a shorter, but it can be difficult, yes. So if they're not watching internet, or you don't find the right length, then it can be difficult. It does have a lot of ethical challenges because you're showing faces, exactly. You need a specific knowledge and equipment, that's true. But I also think that you can learn it pretty easily. And some people from Odysseus, for example, they've been to training, so they also learned it. And so nowadays it's getting to be easier and easier. So if you learn how to use a Word or make a PDF, then you can dedicate a little time to learn how to edit on a free software, for example, and now you have a phone, and by using a phone and a free editing program, you can do quite interesting stuff. So it does require some dedication, but it's not that hard as before. You cannot send it to target persons; they have to look for it. You can send the link if that's what you mean. GDPR. You don't record anybody without their consent. Yes, requires additional resources for promotion and expanding the reach. That's true. That's a big issue these days. So and this also comes to the point when we talk about like the like internet noise. And I said that now it became like in 2006 it became much easier to make to get to a lot of people with your films, and most of the films that we did got like 50,000 views. And I think that was because there were much less videos than now. And now it's much harder to get this many views online because everybody is making videos. Somebody wakes up, makes a video, uploads it. And there's such a big noise that it's much harder to penetrate that. So it does require resources to actually try to penetrate that. And for example, that's one of our weaknesses, that I'm one person and Peter is one person, so the two of us, and I'm so busy producing all the films that I can't invest more energy on promoting a film that is already done. So we put it out, we promote in certain ways, but we don't spend money on them. So that's hard. So my points, less detailed. So you can explain everything in 1 minute, but obviously it will be less detailed than a 50-page report. But actually you can make a 1.5 hour long documentary which can be pretty detailed. So it depends on the format. Is it accessible? Yeah, we discussed that. If there's no internet, it's not accessible. And as you wrote, that it can be it can put the life of those people in danger by exposing them. So that's really an issue. In Bulgaria, for example, when we went to film about an open drug scene, they said that now it will be a really big problem to film there because a few days before, the television company went there and they recorded the people and told them that they just record them, but they will blur their faces. But in the actual show, they did not blur their faces. And so the next day, the police went out and arrested everybody. So, and then we went there with our cameras, and people, we were surprised why they don't wanna show film with us. But we never film anybody in a recognizable way if they are not very clear about allowing that. So we discuss that all the time. And many times we actually film with activists who have no problem with being shown. And you can actually disguise people, so you can blur their faces. You can really do that. You can record from behind, so you can go around that. But this is a very important issue, that we're not using these people's lives for our issues. We're trying to help them. That's one of the most important things. And how can we measure the success? If this video was watched by 300 people, is it a success or is it not? Does it have to have 100,000 views or 1 million views? And I think that it does not have to be. If that 100 people who watched it are making a change or doing something or were inspired, then it was worth doing that film. And it's very hard to compete with TikTok videos or with like videos of little puppies in funny hats with Benny Hill music. That gets 3 million views. Your film about the needle exchange will not get 3 million views, but some people will watch it and you will change those people's minds. So I would like to show now the next example. And if you hear clapping of keyboard, it cannot be mine, but it can be somebody else's. And just make sure that you turn off, so you mute yourself. And now I show this second film, and I will explain a little bit. Just a few words about this. So this is a trailer for a film that we did for the Andrei Rilko Foundation, who were a Russian organization, a harm reduction organization, the only one who actually did needle exchange in Moscow. The whole city Nobody dared to do it because they thought it's illegal, but they figured that it's not illegal, so they would just do it. And they did it with backpacks, and we made a documentary about them 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, and they used the film to fundraise to get a bus, an outreach bus, to reach out to more people. So I will show you this film, and this is an example of you actually, and this was a longer film, but this is a trailer, and it's an example to understand that you actually can say everything in 1.5 minutes.
Что касается эпидемии ВИЧ-инфекции в России, она продолжает развиваться. По оценкам UNAIDS эта цифра может приближаться к 1 миллиону или 1,5 миллиона. Правительство российское, оно не предпринимает буквально вообще никаких шагов для профилактики ВИЧ-инфекции.
Либо болезнь и заносит себе грязь, аж пользуется старыми шприцами.
В Москве, например, да, сейчас работает только один проект снижения вреда, это наш проект.
Миссия нашей организации – это способствовать развитию гуманной наркополитики, основанной на соблюдении прав человека и достоинства человека.
Фонд Андрея Рылькова помогает людям выжить.
Мы можем делать программу иглы и шприцев в Москве, несмотря на то, что 15 лет нам твердили о том, что это невозможно, но мы это делаем.
Я работаю непосредственно outreach-работником, раздаю шприцы и устанавливаю связь с людьми.
Для меня ценно помогать людям.
Провожу тренинги там, по передозам, по ВИЧ. Я помню, как снижение вреда помогло мне, и, возможно, не будь в моей жизни снижения вреда, меня как бы не было бы уже здесь.
У нас ситуация пост-надежда, пост какое-то сопротивление. Мы не пытаемся там поставить себя в оппозицию с правительством. Все, что мы хотим, это защищать жизни своих друзей. Все. Кого мы можем своими руками вытащить, того мы будем вытаскивать.
So you see, there was this call in the end that people can support them, and they established this global giving website, and they used the video for fundraising, and they managed to get enough money to have a bus. And it was really a privilege that many years later I could actually visit them, and when I was filming in Russia and filmed in that bus, and it felt really good that we actually contributed with our video to that bus. And of course, in the light of recent developments of what's going on in Russia, now they are banned, so the organization does not work anymore. And that's very sad. But they did a beautiful job, and they are my heroes, really. I really appreciate their work. And it was really a privilege and a pleasure that I could film about their work, and I could work with them. And so actually, a few words about this. I already mentioned that when we're making videos, then we can we can divide it to 4 phases. Like we have a planning part when we plan and do our strategy and our budget, and then we have the production part when we do the actual recording. We go somewhere and film it, and then when you filmed it, then you have a post-production part, which is when you're editing and changing the colors and making the sound, and then you make the video. And then you have distribution part when you actually put out your video. And what you need, you can spend all the money of the world on gear, but basically you can just go out with a phone and film stuff and make interviews, and then you can even edit on your phone and on your laptop. So you can we started out really cheap, and then you need a camera person. So the way we work is that there's one camera person and one reporter. The reporter is Peter, but you can also work on your own. So you can be the reporter and the camera person at the same time. You need some kind of camera, a phone or a camera. This is the camera that we're using now. It's a very nice camera. It's a Canon R5C camera. but it took many years to build up our equipment. And you need a laptop and an editing software. I'm using Premiere Pro, but there's also DaVinci Resolve, which has a free version. So there are even free editing programs. And we use online platforms to upload our videos. YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, Instagram. You can upload to all these videos. What kind of formats are there? There are there are all kinds of formats of videos, and for different purposes you can choose your format. So you can do a reel, like a 1.5 minute very short reel for Instagram. You can have a 3-minute trailer. You can have info videos, for example, when you stand in front of a green screen and do like talk to the camera, and then you can change the green screen and put something in the background. You can do like video reports, like documentary style video reports, going somewhere and ask people, or record your protest or conference. This can be long or short. You can do short documentaries, interviewing more than one people and edit a nice short documentary, maybe a 35-minute long documentary. You can make long documentary. CapCut, I don't know CapCut, but that's probably some kind of editing, like a free editing software. But if you describe it to me, Shayla, then I will try to answer. So short, long documentaries. You can make talk shows, for example, that you sit down and talk with somebody. It's a longer format. It allows, you can have a talk show with just one person sitting down and talking about a subject for an hour, 1.5 long hour, and then you upload it. So that doesn't require, and you can explain a lot of stuff and doesn't require a lot of editing and a lot of documentary style, B-roll recording and all that. You just sit down in a studio and then make it like a podcast and a video version. That's a very good format. You can also record conferences. So what I'm always teaching our students is that they should if they have a camera, they should record everything that they do. So record all their presentations, record their protests, record any kind of stuff, discussions or these talk shows with each other. And you can also do animation films, which is a very special format, and it's very money and time consuming. We also did one, and I will show you at the end of the presentation. Yeah, I don't know CapCut actually. I'm using Premiere. So yeah, there are a lot of editing programs. I would recommend using DaVinci Resolve because it's free, but also it's a very sophisticated program, and you can find online tutorials on how to use them. Now, the next video, the short video, will be an example for green screen video. This is called What is Harm Reduction, and Peter will talk in it.
In the latest episode of the Just Say No series, we explained why punitive drug policies don't work. Now we present you an alternative approach to drugs and people who use them, based on the principles of harm reduction. Harm reduction is not only applicable to drugs, but to several other activities involving high risk. For example, it's also harm reduction when you drive a car and you fasten your seatbelt, or when you ride a bicycle and you wear a helmet. Similarly, you can provide people who use drugs with sterile needles and syringes to prevent bloodborne infections such as hepatitis C or HIV. This is called needle exchange. Or you can prescribe opioid medications such as methadone or even diacetylmorphine, which is the medical form of heroin, to heroin-dependent people to prevent them from buying dangerous drugs in the black market. This is called opiate substitution treatment, and it is not only effective in improving the health and well-being of patients, but also in reducing crime. We can train people how to use naloxone, an antidote that can reverse the effects of heroin overdose, to save lives. We can test illegal drugs for adulterants to prevent accidental poisoning. This is called drug checking service. We can create hygienic and safer environments where people can use their own drugs with sterile equipment under medical supervision, so we can prevent overdoses and infections. This is called drug consumption room. Harm reduction can not only reduce the negative consequences of drug use itself, but also the harms of repressive drug policies. It's also harm reduction when we mobilize the communities of vulnerable drug users and empower them to fight for their rights. Harm reduction is often contrasted with abstinence and recovery, but that's not true, they are not opposites. For some people, abstinence might be the only right choice, but other people may not be ready or they don't want to quit drug use. Most people who use drugs are not dependent, and dependence is often associated with childhood trauma, social marginalization, and poverty. When you ask a person who lives on the street to quit drug use, it's like asking someone to go to the storm without an umbrella or remove his hat in the desert. Harm reduction is also essential for long-time recovery. These programs reach out drug users on the street. They serve as the first step to other services. Therefore, they need to be part of an integrated drug treatment system. Harm reduction as a philosophy is based on compassionate pragmatism. This means that we would like to help people where they are at, as fellow citizens in need of help, treating them with respect without shaming or judging them. Countries that moved away from repressive drug policies and provide a wide access to harm reduction programs to drug users could significantly reduce deaths and suffering related to drugs. In the next episodes of Just Say No, we will provide you examples of how. Stay with us, follow us on the Drug Reporter website, on our Facebook and Twitter channels, and support us so we can do videos like this one.
So this was an example of how you can do this kind of info video stuff when you don't even need a studio. I did many of these in our kitchen. So you basically hang up a green canvas and someone stands in front of it, Peter stands in front of it, and then you read the text, and then you can make it with music and spice it up, and then it's a good format of informing people. Now, I would like to go through a bunch of examples of what we were doing with Peter, and sorry if I'm talking very fast. I'm trying to speed up because we already a lot of time has spent, and I have lots of slides to come. So we will probably be longer than 1.5 hours. So, but I think it's an interesting topic. So we started out with a small handy cam, and what we did is that we just got a camera and learned a little bit how to do it and went out to conferences, because there are many people and many experts in conferences in one place, and it's really a good place where you can do these kind of documentaries, because there you find all the experts from all around the world. You don't have to visit them individually. They're there, and you can film about all kinds of topics. So that's how we started. And our aim was to educate people about what's going on internationally in drug policy, and to try to explain these often complicated issues in an easily understandable way by interviewing people. So after a while, they started to call us the chroniclers of the drug policy and harm reduction movement, or the harm reduction movement, because we were at all these conferences and on events and happenings, and we provided a kind of chronicle of our own movement. And if you do that, you're not only informing the general public, but you're also kind of helping your allies find their voice and help shape the narrative. So we provided a lot of examples of how other activists are communicating about these issues, what kind of ideas they're talking about. And that was a very helpful tool for our allies as well. So not just everybody whose minds we want to change, but also those who agree with us, who are our colleagues. They benefit from these because they watch it and they get energy from these videos. And so we visited the international and European harm reduction conferences, the DPA drug policy conferences. And when we went to a conference, we also, after or before the conference, we also filmed about a local issue. So we went out and filmed there. For example, when we filmed in Denver, when we were invited there, and they always pay our tickets to get there, as a scholarship. Then we took some more days, and then we filmed about the cannabis legalization issue in Colorado. We also went to harm reduction conferences and international AIDS conferences. You can always record interesting things at these conferences. And what we can do is that we actually, or I am actually editing on site. So basically, we were filming with Peter all day, and then at night I sit down and look at the footage, and on the laptop I edit it. So we usually do this at big conferences, and then we can present the video at the end of the conference, which is a kind of cool stunt that we can pull, and it's also pretty good for the organizers. And also for the audience, that they get this video right at the closing ceremony and they can watch it immediately. It's a lovely thing to do. It's a little bit tiring, so sometimes I stay up till the morning or don't sleep at all, but you can do that once or twice a year. As I'm getting older, maybe less, but it's still something doable. And now I would like to show just a little piece that we did recently in Melbourne at the 27th International Harm Reduction Conference. And it's just a part of the summary film that I edited on site. And it was when we visited the drug consumption room there in Melbourne.
We've had a supervised injecting room set up in 2018 in a suburb not far from here, where there was, high prevalence overdoses and a lot of public injecting. And that room has been outstanding in terms of its achievements. We've had a 50% reduction in overdose deaths in that area. We've had significant change in public injecting.
The injecting room, if they want access, they'll go through there, but they can just come in and access regular needle and syringe services or access the consulting side. We've had over 6,000 separate individuals register to use the service, and there's almost 400,000 visits to the service in that time. So we've had more than 6,000 overdoses. This is the injecting zone. So it's got the capacity for 20 people to inject simultaneously.
You get your syringe, a spoon, water, and a tourniquet.
95% of the visits to the room are to inject heroin, sometimes in combination with other things, and only about 3% methamphetamines.
I really like this room because I know I'll come here and I can safely use whatever my substance of choice is on the day. And this is like one of the few places where I feel welcomed and not judged and not ostracized for what I do. I just feel safe here. I know that I'm not going to die in the alleyway.
How would you feel about the service, the drugs actually being prescribed and supplied here rather than having to buy on the street corner?
That would make it the perfect service. That'd be a dream.
It's called a vein finder. It kind of can show up the veins more easily.
Well, I think this is probably our most informal area, and it's also the place we really get to build up relationship and rapport with people. We can actually do a lot of our referral work, our psychosocial work, and also engaging with people to check in on how they are.
They can get a very quick, rapid result within 60 minutes for hepatitis C RNA, so indicating current hepatitis C infection. You can obviously get treatment prescribed very quickly, and then clients started on treatment very quickly as well.
We have a range of services from primary care, the hepatitis testing you've seen, opiate dependence treatment, oral health care in conjunction with oral health service, legal support, drug treatment, wound care, sexually transmitted infections, mental health support. There's a range of services that we provide in this space here.
To see the holistic range of services you have here, supporting the most vulnerable in the community is really heartwarming. And to think that it's all paid for by the public purse is particularly encouraging. And clearly there's a need for much more of it, not only in this city and state, but across Australia. My own country has nothing like this.
Yeah, so this was a cool piece, and we just went out with the group that had this side event session at the DC at the drug consumption room, and I filmed everything, and then at night I edited this together, and it's a really good piece inside that film. So at conferences, these kind of things also happen, so it's really good for the camera, and. So after going to conferences, what we started to do and do ever since 2008, we went to the United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs, which is a kind of annual gathering of countries to discuss the world drug issue. And and this is kind of like the atmosphere, or used to be the atmosphere. So it's a very mixed atmosphere. It's run by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, but they're mostly coordinating it, and they are also doing very good stuff. They are supporting harm reduction programs around the world, actually with money. But many of the countries, so the countries have very different drug policies, and some of them have these kind of presentations, and the other ones have presentations about naloxone, for example. But what we see in the this was one of the countries' flyer about educational programs that they have. So they give these to kids. Mr. Sun was a happy bear who liked to sleep in bed. One day he took some heroin. Now that happy bear is dead. So it's the kind of like it's a kind of not really kind of prevention that doesn't make much sense. But it's also there. But also good things are there, and we went there to film, and a lot of NGOs are there to try to influence what's going on there, and it's super exciting. And we also went there with our own protests, and it was the 50 years of drug prohibition. So in 2011, 50th anniversary of the global the 61 global convention, and we created this fictional organization called Drug Lords International, and they were actors, and we recorded these kind of video messages that they sent messages to the UN thanking them for maintaining drug prohibition, saying that they are the only ones who benefit from this. And these were very successful video messages, 50, 60,000 views. They were kind of funny also. And then we decided that we take these actors to the United Nations, and we do a protest in which they kind of welcome all the delegates with cookies and champagne to kind of celebrate this. And now I would like to show you this video. We also recorded this protest, and it's an example of how you can talk about very heavy issues in a kind of funny way.
My friends, I came here to celebrate that very important day. It was 50 years of the drug prohibition. You made us rich, and I want to say thank you to the United Nations, Naciones Unidas, to keep drugs illegal.
Push it! You push it real good! Yeah, the Drug Lords!
Keep drugs illegal, my friends, for another 50 years!
Hello to everyone, this is Drug Wars! Join the party, please. Champagne, cash, heroin. Work hard, uniting better.
50 years of prohibition. Nice business for us.
Our business is going very well. Thank you very much for that. Good. Also, meine Damen und Herren, wir haben es geschafft.
One team. Don't forget.
I make fortunes with you. I love you.
My friend, your business is my business.
I know you smoke my mota too, güey.
mafia players of our demonstrations are fake, in case you didn't get that. But the harms of the global drug prohibition are real. 2011 marks the 50th anniversary of the global drug control system. But nor governments, nor the United Nations, and nor we the people, we have no time and reason for celebrate. The only groups, gangs, who has a right and reason to celebrate is the organized crime groups who deal with drugs, because global drug prohibition works only for them. It's really time to think about evaluation, and it's time to think about alternatives.
One of the main arguments used to support the war on drugs and defend our current drug policy system that is based on prohibition is that it is necessary to protect young people from the evils of drug use and addiction. The illegal nature of drugs has not reduced its availability for young people. Drugs continue to be highly accessible to any young person. The threat of punishment has not deterred young people from using drugs, but instead has deterred young people from accessing life-saving health services and support.
We have a terrible public health crisis in the United States, whether it's been the denial of HIV prevention materials in the form of syringes that have been denied to drug injectors for decades now in the United States. Drug overdose is one of the leading causes of death amongst people in the United States. The rise of prescription drug use is another cause of overdose deaths in the United States, and yet we don't come up with solutions because we are so totally fixed on the criminality of people's drug use and drugs themselves. We incarcerate more people, more of our citizens than any other country in the world, mostly for drug offenses. Most of those people are African American or Latino. It has a disproportionate impact on people of color in our country, on poor people, and it divides communities. It has a terrible toll on people being able to go to college, being able to work, being able to vote in our country. Not only that, we have taken this system and we have exported it around the world with the design of a global drug policy, and that's what CND is about.
The Commission on Narcotic Drugs is the governing body of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. It has two roles in the world. One is to ensure that drug policy is run effectively around the world, and secondly, it is to deal with organised crime. However, the reality is that the UN drives a policy which promotes harm, infringes people's human rights, and leads to death and destruction around the world. At the very same time, it brings funding for these people, who are the people making money out of a drugs trade.
I want to stop you. Don't listen to that junkie. I think the prohibition is very good. I don't heard you. Very good. I'm sorry about it, but I see you.
Yeah, so you see, you can do funny things, and it's also, to me, it's an example of how I like to work. Is that I'm not over scripts. So we're never making scripts. We go there and interview people and then improvise. And also, there were two cameramen here, me and my friend, and we recorded whatever we could, and then we edited together everything. And then, during the editing, you hear that they're singing the song, and then you're using it in the film, and then you're working with you get. That's how I like to work. You work with what you have, and so we keep filming there at the CND, and we're making video interviews and reports and everything. It's a very interesting thing if you have a chance as an activist to go there. You learn a lot there. It's almost like a huge drug policy conference by now, because there are something like 170 or something sessions, side events happening at the same time. And in one room, they talk about how effective it is to, like, I don't know, cane people. And in the other room, they talk about heroin maintenance programs. It's really schizophrenic, but super interesting. And it the change is not actually happening there at the UN, but because it's happening in local countries, and because of global power structures and cultural changes. But it is a very good indicator of what is happening around the world, and it shows very well where the countries are and what are the developments. Actually, a super interesting field. For example, you can also record kind of historic events. This is my shot of Evo Morales, president of Bolivia, chewing coca at the United Nations when they wanted to get out of the conventions and get back in a different way so that they can legally produce coca products. And also, you can confront decision makers there very briefly, because we don't have that much time. We definitely will do it longer, so I think it will be until 2:00. But if you can't stay, you can watch it later. So this was for me also a very interesting piece of our work. When we went to the CND, and we always went there, we got media badges. So sometimes we had NGO badges, sometimes media badges. Now we always go with media badges. And the Russian delegation, we bumped into the Russian delegation. This was also 8-9 years ago. We bumped into them and they said, well, you're media, so come with us to this small room, and because we want to do a press conference for you. And this was the head of the Russian anti-drugs agency, Viktor Ivanov, and he did they usually did presentations about Afghanistan because they wanted to mess around Afghanistan there, so they did there. But we went into the room with all kinds of journalists who didn't know much about what's going on in Russia, but we do. And Peter always asked him very inconvenient questions about the prison situation and about the lack of methadone substitution. And we kept meeting him at the CND, and year by year, I think it was 3 or 4 years that we asked him the same question: why is there no methadone substitution in Russia? Because it's still it's up to date. It is banned, and the situation of drug policy is really horrible in Russia. A lot of people die because of AIDS, actually, and because of having no access to methadone. I mean, not that I don't know how many, but probably a lot of people die of AIDS. There are a lot of people who have HIV because they got it because they couldn't access harm reduction measures, and they cannot access substitution treatment. And we always asked him why there's no methadone. And he always made that kind of crazy lies. Like he once said that it was already a failure in Switzerland and they stopped it, and that in the US it was a failure. So it was all kind of, I mean, even before you got to know how they communicate, it was the same kind of communication that we witnessed there. And we made these videos confronting what he said, and then he said something about how that they no longer do it in Switzerland, and then we went out to the corridor and asked the Swiss minister if they do it, and they said that's the most effective treatment of opioid dependence, and we still do it. And actually, interesting thing is this guy, he's no longer the head of the anti-drugs agency. There's no more, as far as I know, there's no such agency anymore. There was an article in The Guardian about, if you Google Viktor Ivanov, you will find interesting stuff about him. There was a guy who was called, I think, I can't recall his name. Unfortunately, I knew, but I wanted to say it fast, but Litvinenko. He was murdered in the UK because of talking about corruption issues in Russia. And one of the things he said, I mean, he was killed with Novichok, the kind of drug that the FSB kills with. One of the things he said was that this guy, Viktor Ivanov, was in charge of the Kali cartel cocaine trade in St. Petersburg when Putin was the mayor and Ivanov was the head of police there. So it's an interesting allegation. I don't know if it's true. Definitely the guy who said it was killed partly for this. So you see what kind of people run around those corridors and represent their countries. So after the CND, we went. What we did is that we started to help other NGOs in their issues. So we went to a country in Europe and recorded about harm reduction and drug policy developments there. So we were trying to help the local advocacy efforts, and we did a whole series about the funding crisis of harm reduction in Eastern Europe, because in all Eastern European countries, harm reduction was funded by the Global Fund. And when that money went out and the countries didn't give enough money to the Global Fund, they cut that funding, and all the beautiful harm reduction programs that were built up, they got closed. And that happened in Romania, in Serbia. This is the bus that was bought from Global Fund money, and it's rotting on the side of the road. This happened in Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, North Macedonia. So we went to all these places and filmed about and tried to make a kind of film saying that trying to convince the local governments to keep funding these programs because it is their responsibility. And in some places it worked to a degree. They got some extension, they could do, so they used these videos as, this is very concrete advocacy example of how you can use video in trying to convince your government to fund a program. So we have a whole series of these films. And whenever we had the possibility, mostly for some conferences, we tried to film about good and bad practices. So we filmed about heroin prescription in Switzerland. This is Ambros Uchtenhagen, the kind of godfather of heroin prescription or heroin maintenance program in Switzerland, which means that they not only give methadone substitution, but provide heroin to people as a harm reduction measure to prevent overdoses, to prevent spread of infections, to get people out of the black market and try to reintegrate them into society. And we also filmed about Insight, which is a drug consumption room where people can safely consume their drugs in a supervised environment. And this is a beautiful place in Vancouver, which had to fight their own government. The Harper government wanted to close it down. They didn't want to give them the extension of their permit, and so they had to go on court. And all the other organizations joined in, so there were lots of lawyers and user activists, and they had to go up all the way to the Supreme Court. But they won, and they won, and so the government had to keep them open. This was really a historic fight, and we kind of documented that. The way we do it is that we go to film to a place, and we film there for like 3 days, and then get all kind of archives and everything. So our filmmaking process is like very fast. We don't have time and capacity and money to stay there for very long, but we make a couple of interviews, film on the sites, and then put together the films. But this was also watched by 50,000 or so people. And then ever since this film, we have I think 10 films about drug consumption rooms, and now with Correlation we're just working on a summary film with all like a big drug consumption room film. That's the thing I'm working on right now. So we also documented good practices, for example, decriminalization model in Portugal, or harmful policies, or what is happening when you use the army against drugs, and what happened in Mexico, all those many deaths that happened because they were fighting a war on drugs. And we were also filming about experiments and development. So in New Zealand, for example, where they tried to legalize new psychoactive substances in a way that the companies could make the whole research process, animal research, human research, that otherwise a medical company with any kind of medicine does. The law said that you could do that, and if it's you do the whole process, then you can legalize that certain new psychoactive substance. But as far as I know, it never. I mean, the law, they accepted the law, but what happened is that animal rights activists kind of blocked it because they achieved that you cannot test these substances on animals. So now it's blocked. They cannot legalize these substances, so they keep testing them on people on the black market. So we also documented our own protests that happened, for example, in Hungary, which is sliding more and more towards an authoritarian system, and this was a protest that we recorded. So we tried to use our tools, our possibilities to amplify voices of other issues as well. This was also a protest. While we were working at the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union, we also recorded court trials and used them as examples. We also recorded rights abuses. We worked for Roma rights activists as well, so we helped them when there was police beating of people. We recorded testimonies, and then we used that at courts. So that's another thing that you can do with video advocacy. We documented how Roma people are racially profiled by the police, so that they give out much more fines to Roma people than non-Roma people, and we had a lot of evidence of that, and they used these testimonies and evidences to advocate to end discrimination. And now the next short example I would like to show you is about rights abuse documentation, and this is an example of Russia by street lawyers who documented torture in so-called treatment centers. These are not really treatment centers. They are established by kind of mafia people who beat up people there. And so this is a video about that. It's a really good example of how you can use it as human rights testimony.
This story is about the success of community legal support and video documenting of cases of torture in the name of drug treatment. I am Alexei Kurmanaevsky, a street lawyer in Russia. For many years I witnessed thousands of people are locked in private drug treatment centers, where they are often subjected to physical violence, cruel and degrading treatment. Most victims are afraid of taking action, including due to the lack of any support from people they would trust to. As a person who used drugs and a lawyer, I talked to many of them. Together we started video recording victims' testimonies. Nobody agreed to talk with open face, but we managed to record many hours of very detailed accounts about horrible practices.
Непосредственно за это время приезжали новички, которых привозили привязанными, избитыми, то есть их сразу уводили в баню. Если там они оказывали какое-то сопротивление, их просто били.
Да, ну я сказал, говорю, вы не имеете права, как бы. Ну там грудь пробили, он, ну это так называемый психолог. Потом спустили опять вниз, и в эту же яму ко второму человеку как бы посадили, начали поливать водой уже. Ледяной. После часа где-то начали судороги брать, я начал вылазить оттуда. Потом получил сильный удар, оказывается, они у меня, ну, вот колеса есть машины с дисками, ну, закидали, как бы, чтобы я не смог вылезти оттуда. Там других, там всех, кого привозят, они все через яму проходят в основном.
With the consent of victims, the videos were released to mass media. The story of torture in the name of drug treatment got local and federal media attention. More victims agreed to talk in front of the camera. Some victims decided to go further and file official complaints to law enforcement. As a result, the prosecutor's office inspected over 30 privately run drug addiction rehabilitation centers. 19 centers were closed due to the discovered violation of law. The criminal investigation is ongoing. With an appropriate technical assistance, Street Lawyers Project can be a very effective vehicle to bring justice to people who use drugs and other most vulnerable communities.
This is a really nice project, and when you use video, it can be very powerful in certain cases and certain issues. We also documented the heroic work of harm reduction programs in pre-war Russia. I don't think that these programs are working anymore. I was there a few years ago, I think 2019, in 7 cities. We went to 7 cities in 2 weeks to film about the programs that were funded by the Global Fund, harm reduction programs. So the way it worked is that the money didn't go to the government, but it went to an NGO committee, and they distributed the money, and they did really, really beautiful job. Because you would think that there's no harm reduction work in Russia, but there was a lot. But now, I suppose these programs all closed. Or maybe some of them are still there running, but most of them are, I suppose, are closed. I mean, they would probably, kill them if they figure out if they do that. For example, we filmed with a guy who in a drag, so doing it in St. Petersburg, she was doing a drag show, and a trans woman. And then after the drag show, she in the whole dress, she was doing screening, HIV screening there for the LGBTQ community. It was really beautiful. I don't think that he's doing that anymore because it's very dangerous. So apart from documenting, we're also doing educating. So we're trying to, with all the stuff that we document, we try to educate the general public, the decision makers, our allies, affected populations, and students. So in Hungary, we have a Drug Reporter Free University series, all kind of drug topics. We record that, put everything online, and we also use parts of that to you see? Yeah. So there was a comment, LGBTQ in Russia was announced as a terrorist organization. So I don't know how that exactly is, but there are all kind of laws, propaganda and anti-LGBTQ and drug propaganda laws. So in terms, I know about the drug part. There's a drug propaganda law basically that says that anything you say that is not bad about drugs is drug propaganda. So any harm reduction, and then you can get fined. And so that's why they shut down the Andrei Foundation's website, because they had information about methadone on it, and when they were giving out flyers, they were punished for it. So yeah, they're trying to prohibit rainbows. So it's really, really horrible. So it's horrible. But coming back to our issue, we work more and more in kind of international cooperation. So what we were doing is that we were traveling to all these places, but we don't want to travel all the time. So we were training people to be able to film. And what we're trying to do more and more is work with those people that we train so that they film footage and then send it to us, and then we edit it together, or they edit it, and then we can produce stuff, because it's much more cost effective that we don't have. During COVID, I was sitting at home in an underpant and basically made a whole series about the drug users' rights movement. So basically, I was remote controlling other filmmakers all around the world, making filming in 20 countries, making 34 interviews. Some of them I did earlier, but we identified videographers who made the footage and sent it to us, and I put together the whole series. So it is a possible thing to do now, that you ask someone to film for you and then they send it to you. And so, but this was kind of like the first such attempt. We filmed in 7 cities around the world, and this shows one day, and it shows people who use drugs in that day. And our argument was that they are using the same substance, but the way their lives turn out is very different. And our argument was that the reason why it's different is because of the policy that surrounds them and the circumstances that surround them. So I want to show you the trailer of this film. It's all available online. And again, if you don't see the video in the big screen, you just on the top of the screen, you click on the side-by-side view and pull it to the side. So let's watch this short trailer, and I'm speaking real fast so that we can finish we can have everything said. Let's see this one.
Drug users and activists work together in 7 countries to produce a movie about a day in the life of 8 people. A film about their drug use and their struggles.
Ezt a cuccot már nem azért csinálom, mert hogy jó. Addig ad jó érzés, míg beadod magadat, és kikapcsolod, nem gondolkodom. Ez már az ember nem gyógyszer.
Con el segundo fix perdí por completo la conciencia, blackout.
y cuando empecé a volver estaba dislocado mi brazo derecho y me había pasado más de 6 horas inconsciente sobre la articulación y el tronco del nervio, lo que me dejó el brazo casi en su totalidad paralizado. Esto era algo que realmente cambió la forma en que sentía y pensaba sobre la heroína y las drogas en general.
A film about how the drug war affects their lives.
Yang saya alami kemudian adalah kaki saya digantung ke atas oleh mereka. Lapak kaki saya terus dipukuli pakai rotan dan mereka meminta saya menyebutkan nama-nama orang yang saya kenal sebagai pengedar nafsa. Dengan keadaan mata tertutup, saya dibawa ke dalam mobil dan berjalan selama beberapa menit. Pada saat mobil berhenti di tempat yang saya tidak tahu, saya diturunkan dari mobil. Dan kemudian mereka menembak kaki saya.
A film showing their fight against stigma and discrimination.
We want our female drug users to come outside to fight for our rights. Let there be equality within we the men and the women too.
В моем городе убили несколько человек в реабилитации, и насилие продолжается. И сегодня я говорю об этом. Сотни людей в Крыму остались без заместительной терапии, и десятки из них уже погибли. И я снимаю об этом.
A film about saving lives.
I'm walking up and down Washington Heights, promoting harm reduction, promoting how not to get infected with HCV and HIV, also giving out clean syringes. I've reversed 3 overdoses in my life, and I saved the person's life. The person's alive. It's a very good feeling. Can't describe it.
Ich würde mich gerne über die Diamorphinvergabe informieren.
Das ist hier das Diamorphin. Das sind 10 Gramm Heroin. Genau, dann geht man hier hin mit seiner Schale, spritzt sich das. Mittel und Mitarbeiter.
Und macht anschließend wieder sauber.
Anschließend seinen Tisch sauber.
A film about how people who use drugs can effectively influence policies and improve the lives of their communities.
Kami juga selalu mempromosikan bahwa pengguna nafza dapat hidup bersama dengan masyarakat lainnya. Kami dapat berkontribusi kepada masyarakat dan kami juga dapat produktif. Kami adalah bagian dari solusi, bukan merupakan bagian dari masalah.
A day in the life, the world of humans who use drugs.
Yeah, so I think it's a beautiful film. It's all everything that we do is on YouTube. It's all online. Thank you, Nuria. It's a pleasure talking about our work to you. And so yeah, it's a very nice film. It's all when we do these kind of bigger documentaries, it's a longer one. Then you can do screenings and you can send it to film festivals. That's a very different kind of world, the film festival stuff. Sometimes I engage in it, but that's not really my thing. So I like to put everything online, YouTube, so everybody can find it. The reason why we send it sometimes to festivals is that we think or hope that it brings more attention and more views. During COVID, so this is so I was talking about we don't fly all over the place all the time. We try to minimize that. And try to work with people who send footage to us. And when you can't even get out of your room, you can even make movies, because in COVID times, what we did is that we did these kind of talk shows with people on Zoom, and you can record that and also edit some kind of B-rolls on top, so you can even continue making your movies just sitting in your room and not even stepping out. And we also started to do this kind of news series. And this Medicineras, it's a really nice film about drug consumption rooms that was that is made with the same way in Barcelona. It's a fantastic place for women and trans people and non-binary people, specialized consumption rooms for them. It's a whole community. It's much more than just an injecting room. There, the injecting is just a secondary thing, and all the other dignifying. It's really beautiful. And we asked a very talented photographer, Carmen, to make videos for us and make an interview with Aura, and I edited it together. And so this way we can cooperate. And this is the series, and I'm not showing you the trailer now of this series. I planned to, but I want to save some time. this is a whole series about the drug users' rights movement. You can find it on Drugreporter. This is what I was talking about, that we actually, during COVID, I asked people to send me footage and we put it together. And in all regions around the world, it's about the oral history of the drug users' rights movement. And we also did do, it's about our recent activities. Now, we just recently did a film on new psychoactive substances in Hungary, which affects mostly the Roma people. So they're like the poorest people use the cheapest new synthetic THC, new synthetic cannabinoids, and it is having really bad effect on them, actually, because it's always overdosing. You know, they never know the proper dose, and it's having harmful effects, and they're kind of abandoned and nobody cares about them. They're kind of laughed upon, and so it's a really bad situation. And we just did a 1 hour long film about this in Hungary, and it got 130,000 views by now, and it goes up by thousands every day. So this also shows that you can do a long film and get a lot of views if it touches upon an issue that the people are at that moment are very interested in. And now I would like, this is the last part of the presentation, and we will be over our time a little bit, but I hope you don't mind. This is a very concrete whole campaign that we did in Hungary. It's called Room in District 8. And this was a campaign in 2014 when the right-wing municipality closed down the needle exchange program in the downtown District 8, which was a district where a lot of poor people live, a lot of Roma people live, and at that time a lot of injectors lived, because that time new synthetic drugs, catinones, appeared and people injected more. And the municipality blamed the needle exchange for all the problems, and we knew that we can't save the needle exchange program. They just shut them down. But we wanted to use this opportunity to talk about better solutions, and we wanted to talk about drug consumption rooms. So we made a campaign which was called Room in District 8, which is room is like drug consumption room, and we got some extra spare money that we could use to build a website, to make a petition collection and do this kind of online and offline petition collecting. And we wrote a petition, and our angle this time was not the human rights and dignity angle, but more of like we want like a drug litter free district, and we have better solutions than making more policing, and our solution is better. We want a safe environment for people to use, but we focused it from the angle of the neighborhood and not the angle of the users themselves, which we thought could be a more tactical kind of way. And of course we talked about the users' rights and everything, but the main angle was that we want drug litter free district. That's also an important argument, and we said that our solution is better than having more police. And we did a long film, I think not that long, like 25-30 minute long film that was watched by something like maybe 400,000 times since, and I want to show you the trailer of it. And there's only one more video that I will show today, but I will show you this trailer now. It's in Hungarian, but with English subtitles.
Budapest életében a 8. kerületnek mindig volt egy nagyon sajátos jellegzetessége.
Mennyi betörő, meg mennyi kábítós, meg minden van.
Az első útja oda vezet, itt van a kapuhajba, be is szúrta magát.
Bemész, veszem, azt tudod, mi az, kért, megveszed, benyomod, és akkor rájössz.
Most már elég keveset csinálom. Naponta 200 lövni. Két pontról vagyunk, minket össze.
Épp az olyan a lakóknak, hogy bezárják ezt a két pontot, mert drogosok járnak, és össze-vissza dobják a pincékbe, minden az utcákon, a gyerekek beleléptek.
Az, hogyha a kék pont bezárat az anyagosok, ők itt maradnak.
De én nem azt mondtam, hogy zárják benne. Az én javaslatom az például az volt, hogy csináljanak egy olyan szobát, ahol ő ott be tudja magát lőni, és rögtön utána a tűjét így vissza is tudja adni. És akkor nem a nyakunkba szemetel, nem nálunk terszítők rá a bejáratot, nem itt fenyeget minket mindenféle egészségügyi problémák. De most mennyivel jobb, hogy nincs belövő szoba annál, hogy odaadják nekik a tűt, és utána ott lövik be magukat, ahol akarják. Tehát akkor már inkább legyen.
Amennyire a budapesti polgárok egyetértenek azzal, hogy a rendőri szigor önmagában nem megoldás a drog problémákra, támogassák a kampányunkat a szoba8ban.org oldalon, ahol aláírhatják a biztonságos fővárosért folyó kampányunk petícióját.
So this is beautifully recorded by my colleague, my former colleague Robert, and he's a very talented cameraman. He's also a Roma person, so he was my colleague. So yeah, I really loved working with him at the HCLU. So we did this film together. We used drone footage, and it captures the atmosphere of this district pretty well. And this film worked very nicely. A lot of people watched it. We also did like screenings. So when you do this kind of campaign, you make a film and then you can do like discussion forums with screenings and where you can talk. And also they took pieces of the film and the TV and they made their own versions of it. That's what usually they do. They don't take our whole film, but from many of our films, they take a bit of it and then they make their own report around it, which is for me perfectly fine because then you got into the television with your issue. And we also did, Peter filed a complaint to the ombudsman. We had 340,000 views of the video, a lot of signatures, a lot of appearances in media and everything. We could not stop the closure of the needle exchange. And actually it resulted in, so basically they closed down that needle exchange. And so there were two big needle exchange programs in Budapest. This was in this district, and the other one was in a more posh area where I live. Not posh, but it's also downtown, but it's a more, not that broke down neighborhood. And there was also another needle exchange, and they closed that down as well because they were afraid that all the Roma people would go there from the needle exchange that they shut down first. So both big needle exchange programs got shut down, and it resulted in hepatitis levels skyrocketing among people who use drugs, and they haven't opened them yet. Still, there are small ones, but they don't reach those people. So it was really bad. That one, the second one that closed down, was the needle exchange that I used to work 20 years ago when I started this whole thing. So, and unfortunately, when we're talking about advocacy, we're talking about trying to convince decision makers to make better laws or change policies. This idea works best if those who are in decision-making position have the minimum heart or decency, who listen or to whom the human lives matter. In case it doesn't, then, such as the case of Hungary or Russia, then this kind of advocacy doesn't work towards decision makers. And the way, even sometimes you hear that just don't say what you want, because then they would do the opposite. You give ideas what not to do. So in the Hungarian case, we're not really targeting decision makers. We're targeting the general public so that they have an understanding of this. So, and I think in this case, we reached out to so many people that the idea of drug consumption rooms and a more humane approach got stuck in a lot of people's heads. That's what we could achieve with our efforts, 3-4 people's work. We couldn't stop this from happening, but we can at least document what's going on and change some people's minds in the general public. And Peter also wrote an ombudsman complaint, and the ombudsman was investigating. And unfortunately, what's going on in Hungary right now is that the Orbán government They never engage in a dialogue with you. If your voice grows too big that can threaten their power and their mafia, then they attack you. They go after you. They want to discredit you. So that's what they did with Peter as well. He wrote an email to the ombudsman asking when the report is coming out. And someone from the ombudsman office who was an Orbanist, he leaked out this email in which the colleague of the ombudsman answered that it's going to be a good report and it's going to come out this and this time. And it went out into the right-wing press and they said that basically it's corruption, that Peter is emailing this ombudsman stuff, and they wrote that this is going to be a good report and that Peter is like a puppet master and the ombudsman is his puppet, and the ombudsman had to appear in a parliamentary committee to talk about how Peter is playing him as a puppet. So what they do, and this is kind of like a Russian model, they don't, and Hungarian model now, that they don't engage in a dialogue with the actual topic. They discredit you and they talk about you, that you who and how, you know. So that was a kind of bad experience. Yeah, so that's about this campaign, but it was a beautiful campaign. People are still watching it. So this is the other last thing that I want to say is that it's hard to tell when your film is going to be successful, but when there is really a need for that topic to be discussed, and it's really a topic that people care about, then that film will be successful. If you try to import an idea that people don't care about it, it's much harder. We also have special formats, and I'm almost done. We also have special formats such as animation, and this is the film that I'm one of the films that I'm most proud of. This is called Kostya Proletarsky, and I worked with my friend Anya Sarang, who was working at the Andrei Rilko Foundation, who you saw a film about. They were the ones doing the needle exchange. She had a friend, Kostya, who was a heroin user in St. Petersburg, and Kostya was locked up in prison in the north, in Russia, in Karelia, and he was HIV positive, and they denied his HIV medication for 3 years. He asked for it and they didn't give it to him. They also tortured him in many ways. And because of his health deterioration and tuberculosis that got much more severe in the prison, he was released. And not long after he was released, he died of AIDS and AIDS complications. And before that, he gave an interview to Anya on a microphone in the hospital. And it was my dream. So it was my dream ever since to turn this into an animation. And I managed to do it. And it's a trigger warning because we're talking about torture in this film. So I played the trailer.
Kostya Proletarsky was my friend. He was a drug user and HIV activist who lived in St. Petersburg, Russia. The animated documentary film is using the audio interview he gave me at the hospital shortly before his death.
Давай, Влади, рассказывай тогда.
В 2006 году меня осудили на 3 года общего режима.
His untimely death was the result of years of mistreatment and torture at a prison facility in Karelia, Russia.
Там было много смертей, я очень много видел, умирали люди.
In the prison camp, Kostya was denied access to his HIV medication. Inmates were regularly beaten and tortured.
А что ты там рассказывал, каким-то азотом или
А, хлоркой?
хлоркой?
Не, ну это у всех, это не только Вечевых там касается, да? То есть это по приезду в лагере там с тебя сбивают спесь, так сказать. Ну, показывает кто хозяин, это хлорка с аммиаком заливается. Допустим, 30 литров там и раствора этой хлорки горячей водой и аммиаком заливается тебе в камеру. Ну, я опустил глаза на пол и смотрю, что дым идет просто от досок, представляешь? Такой раствор делают, что ты практически на на грани там потери сознания, понимаешь? Когда тебе выжигает глаза там, ты не можешь дышать, у тебя уже пена идет из желудка, да? Это просто как газовая камера, я тебе серьезно говорю, вот, заливают, и там дышать просто нечем. И у тебя даже лицо вот начинает, все растворяется, вообще разъедает, представляешь?
The documentary also features Irina, Kosty's mother, who tells us about her son's addiction and their failure to find effective treatment.
За эти годы, сколько, лет 12, наверное, вот так, с этой бедой мы жили. И вот почти каждый год что-нибудь доделали. То он сам переломается, в реабилитационные центры ездил, он объездил всю страну. Не справлялся. Он и сам переломался. Ну, как мать, наверное, к сыну я всегда относилась к этому. Конечно, ругалась и дрались, и все было, все было. Момент такой настал, что я уже с ним жить не могла.
И вот я освободился, домой приехал, у меня 40 температура. Я приехал в больницу в Будке. Туберкулез, у меня было обострение туберкулеза. И ОРВ хотят назначить, но до сих пор не назначают. Потому что не рискуют. Потому что тут риск такой 50 на 50. Либо туберкулез обострится так, что будет летальный исход, либо все будет нормально.
Yeah. So sorry that I got a bit emotional. I still get emotional, and I was even while working on it, I got emotional because this story kind of represents everything about me or why I'm doing this. And yeah, if you haven't seen the film, watch it. It's also on Drugreporter, and we won a bunch of festivals, 2 festivals with it, and got kind of. But interestingly, it did not get that many views. So please contribute to the number of views on YouTube. So to finish up, what have we achieved? We were documenting, educating, and mobilizing, as I explained before. We were also entertaining people. We got lots of awards and medals. We served as inspiration, as resources. For example, that's John Oliver, and he was using our footage twice, actually, once about sex work and once about drug issue. And that's pretty cool. We were training hundreds of people and motivating them to use video. And if you would like to, follow Drugreporter on Facebook and see if we do this training again. It's quite an expensive thing to do because we have to fly in everybody and rent laptops and it's a long training, but we can do it time to time. Usually once a year or once every 2 years, or make shorter trainings. We sometimes do online trainings like this now, but for longer time. So that was the promotion part of the training. And then we created something that's valuable and lasting. So, the thing I like about my work is that I hope I can do something with this that helps people. And on the other hand, that makes the world a little bit better place. But also I enjoy it while creating something. So it's a little bit like a tiny bit like art, because that animation I did with a friend of mine, the 2 of us, and she's a graphic artist and she did it frame by frame, and we did it for 3 years, and I edited it together with the editing program, and we did the music. So it's like you can create stuff and also can have fun. We got awarded there at the Harm Reduction Conference. We got the International Rollstone Award for successful international harm reduction advocacy. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much for staying with me, and thanks for taking your time, and see you at the next session. And make videos if you can.